Bear with me a second. I should start. Okay then, so as I was just saying, we have the three different types of activities, right? So we've got the topic activities, the accuracy, the structure activities, and the vocabulary activities. And so with the structure and the vocab activities is where we're focusing on the accuracy. So obviously the structures is all the grammar, the vocabulary is learning new vocabulary, and then to practice the students' fluency, we do that more through the topic activity. So that's where we can have a bit more of a discussion or a bit more of a debate. You know, often it's about current news. So it's what's happening in the world at the moment. And we, you know, because students want to talk about that stuff anyway, right? They want to talk about what's happening in the world, what's going on around them. Often, you know, even when you start a class, you start with your student, hi, how are you doing? Okay, perfect. Yeah. And sometimes they jump in and they say, oh my God, did you see the news the other day? And you know, and they want to talk about that stuff. So it's really good to have the topic activities, to have them really up to date and things that students want to be talking about. So that's why these activities, especially the topic ones, are being created daily, just so that they're up to date and they're modern, because that's the stuff that the students finally they want to be discussing. It's relevant. So that's where with the topic activities, we're going to practice the fluency, like I said, whether that's through a debate, reading a text or watching a video, or just simply looking at a picture as well. It's not actually always necessary to read a long article to talk about it. You could look at a picture, or you could just have the headline, or you could just have a short video, you know, a short video clip. So you've got all these different options, and we're going to talk a little bit about those options now. If we start with the topic activities, I wanted to ask you guys if you thought if there was any is there anything that you think is a little bit that's too controversial to talk about? Jazz, if I come to you, do you think there's anything that you can't talk about with a student?
Oh, you mean in general?
Yeah, like in terms of like a topic of conversation, is there something that's going to be is there something too controversial that you should never talk about with a student?
Like they say, when you go to a party, don't talk about politics and religion. There's been rules. I think it depends on the level of the students and the knowledge of current affairs. You know, if you've got great lower level, you're not going to suddenly start talking about Brexit or law. You know, you've got to gauge the level of their understanding of current matters. But I think nowadays, you know, as long as you control the conversation, you're pretty much okay to talk about certain things within reason. I don't know.
I think you need to, in a sense, I think, assess where, like, after knowing the student for a while, you'll start learning a bit about their political views, their views on societal norms and everything. But I think until then, religion needs to be kept out of the equation, as well as politics. But eventually, I mean, if you start to realize that you and the student share the same views on, I don't know, for example, gender roles or something like that, then yes, you can talk about it. But I think the thing is, nowadays everyone is so almost not even on the defense, or almost immediately on the offense. So I think in a sense very careful with students, because you know, it is the case that in some cultures, you know, women are still regarded as like lesser opinion and everything. And I've heard of people who have been in the position where students actually start arguing with them about their religion. I have a friend who one of her students straight up told her she's going to hell. So, you know, it's a bit of a, I think that's where it comes in. You have to assess your student and also assess the situation you're in. But until you know that, I guess it's best to stick to topics of, you know, rather what is happening in the world, instead of asking things like, what is your opinion on this, I think.
Yes, I agree. I think from personal experience, not teaching students, but generally, for example, in Thailand, which is most of my business, I have to be very careful because you're not allowed to touch royalty. You can't even discuss them. You probably get arrested. But I think you got to get to know your student, and everyone is so uptight at the moment, generally very opinionated about certain things. So once you get to know your student, you'll understand the political views. But I personally, to be on the safe side, would keep it very general and then get to know them, maybe.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, I've got some students that I'm thinking of now that I've known them for quite a while now, maybe, a year or 2 years even plus. And, I mean, we've covered every topic of conversation, like everything you can imagine. But, that was not a case of me, hi, day one. Hi, my name's Rob. What's your opinion about, especially like in a place like Barcelona where things, with obviously Catalan and the independence, it can get quite political, and I've had students who, I've got students on both sides of that argument who have very, very, very strong opinions, but either way. And so that's not something that I would do on day one, but after some time, maybe when you've built that rapport, then, you can have those kind of discussions. I think it's not a case of me going there and giving my opinion necessarily, or I'm not there to, of course, I'm not there to lecture them and tell them that my opinion is correct or whatever. You don't even need to give your opinion sometimes. I've had students ask my opinion about it, in which case, I've kind of, given a bit of a response, but yeah, I think, once, like you said, once you know your students, these conversations come up. Like I said, I've got one student in particular I've known for a long time, and we've covered everything. Like, we've covered all the topics you can imagine, but we've got that rapport. And I think it's just about knowing your students as well, right? Knowing the students. And some students want to do it, because don't forget the controversial topics, those things that maybe we were told in the past not to mention, about politics or religion. Sometimes they're the conversations that get students talking the most. And that's what I want during the topic activities, right? I want my students to be talking as much as possible and giving their opinions, and that kind of stuff. So, but I think it's just that we all need, and I'm sure we've all got a bit of common sense, I'm not
also, Rob, how are they going to increase their knowledge of the vocabulary if they don't engage in,
that's it,
complicated topics? You can encourage them to talk about current affairs, and they're going to learn new words, and also how to express their opinion, I suppose, how to
absolutely
argument.
Absolutely, yeah. And like, as I mentioned, they're often the topics that get everyone talking, in politics or money, or I don't know, whatever, that kind of stuff. So I think it is possible to talk about these things in a way with students that you're not there. I'm not there lecturing them on my opinion. I'm not there to convince them that my opinion is right, and you can have a conversation and a debate around it. Sometimes I've also got students, if I've got a couple of students, I think sometimes it's good to get students to even argue what they don't believe. So you can say, okay, I know this is maybe your opinion on this matter, but I want you actually to convince me the opposite, just to get them thinking about arguments going the other way, because it's very easy to argue about something you have strong opinions about, right? But if you're trying to argue the opposite of what you believe, then I think that can be a bit more challenging for some students sometimes. And I think, like you say, it's just about knowing your students, knowing there's certain students that I would not really cover that kind of stuff with. And then there's other students that I know from the very start, they're very open. And I found also, most of my students are Spanish. I've got some South American or French and Polish, etc., but the majority are Spanish, and I found they're often very open anyway to give their opinion very, very quickly, more than British, I would say. Even, I think that was one of the things that was surprised me when I arrived here, was like, actually they're very open. They do tell you a lot of information, they do open up to you, found students do open up to you very, very quickly. And more than I would say that a student would do in the UK, for example, or maybe elsewhere in another country. So yeah, I think there's a way that you can cover politics or cover religion, cover money, cover finance, all this kind of stuff, but done in the correct way, right? Not there to and certainly not there to argue with my students, right? So that's in terms of like the topic activities. Now we've got all the millions of different things we can talk about, and often it's about business news or current news with the topics that are in the system. So that's when we're practicing the fluency, right? So we're getting them speaking as much as possible. Now, in terms of the accuracy, so through the vocabulary, and through the structure activities. In terms of the structure activities, one thing that I've noticed sometimes with the activities that are in the system, sometimes the I don't know, if it's we're practicing a tense or one of the conditionals, I find sometimes that actually the language that's being used in the examples that you show to students is often very difficult. And then so you spend more time actually with the students trying to figure out the definition of the words in the examples rather than the actual tense, so rather than the actual structure. And so with the structure idea, the activities, the idea is that we keep the language easy so that then they can get the structure correct, you know. So if I'm doing something like one of the tenses like future perfect, by Christmas I will have if I write a really complicated example with words that the students aren't going to understand, that maybe are too difficult for their level, then they're concentrating on the meaning of the words rather than the actual structure. And so it's really important with the structure activities to keep the vocabulary simple. Just give simple examples, and students can then focus on the construction of the tense or the conditional or whatever it is, rather than the language there. And then they can start to give their own examples later. And we use the kind of PPP approach. So that's like present, practice, produce. So that's the idea. So first of all, we're going to present the structure to the students with examples. We tend not to go into too much detail. We try not to go into too much detail. You know, I never say to my students, okay, this is the future perfect and blah, 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 and give a long-winded kind of definition to what it is. I tend to give them some examples, get them to notice the rule, get them to notice the tense, and then we'll move on to the practice stage. So you've got the present stage that you're then introducing the tense through the examples. You've got that followed by the practice stage, where we'll have a little bit of a practice together, and then the final P is produce. So then I want the students to be able to produce it by themselves, and give me lots more examples. So for you guys, maybe if some of you, you might all be familiar with it, but if not, if you can put the PPP method or PPP into Google, present, practice, produce, and you can find information about that as well. So if you're not familiar with it, then I suggest you guys can have a look afterwards and take a look and see what you think, just so you're familiar with it. So that's the idea with the structures. Yeah, let's keep it simple in terms of the language, and get the students to be noticing the rules, noticing the construction of the sentence through examples. They could be examples that you've got in the material, or they could just be some examples that you've thought of before the class that you can give to the students, or the student or the examples in. Often you find them maybe in the introduction stage, in the intro questions. You've got some examples there, yeah. And obviously with the vocabulary, then the vocabulary is a little bit simpler, but we need like lots of pictures, lots of images, etc., etc. And that type of thing. It's also good to remember like the different types of things that we can have within an activity. So again, I could go back to the topic of ones. We could just have a text. Often, like I said, a text. We can read the text. We can talk about it. We can have a debate. We can do a role play. We can play a game. So it's always good to try and include games. Not only text, but like I mentioned, a picture. Sometimes you don't even need a text, just the picture, as I mentioned, a big picture, and it gets students talking. Videos are good, but we try to keep the videos short, you know. If a video is around 30 seconds, maybe 30-40 seconds, I think that's all right. Even though when you're maybe creating material and the teacher is creating material, you say, I'll just put this video for it's a 2-minute video, I'll put that in. Actually, 2 minutes of the class, especially if it's one of the 30 minutes classes, can be, you know, it takes up quite a large percentage of or a large portion of the class. So keep videos short. Sometimes, you know, I've also seen, and I've done it in the past, where I've put a bit of a longer video in the material, and I've said, okay, only watch till minute 30, till second 30, sorry. Or if it's another long one, I say, okay, you don't actually have to do this in the class, but you've got it there, and your students can watch it after class if they'd like to watch the full video. So it's good to have the videos there, but in the teacher's notes in the activity, you can put either the seconds that you want them to watch until, or don't watch the video in class, but there it is for the students after class if they'd like to see it. All right. The other things that we could do, like I mentioned, headlines. Having a headline is always good. In terms of games, Mari Carmen, how are you doing? I hope you're all right. If I come to you, yeah, what games have you done with students in the past that have worked well? I don't know if you can hear me, Mari Carmen. I can't hear you.
Yes, now I can.
Now, perfect.
Sorry. Yeah, well, about the games, well, it depends with smaller kids, very engaging games, choosing pictures and saying what the thing or describing pictures as well, and see who finds more errors, for example, in the pictures and things like that, depending on the age, obviously. But yeah, I'm not sure if you're talking about the adults as well.
Yeah, it could be for adults as well. Yeah, because this, sometimes we tend to think games are only for kids, but actually for adults, games work just as well a lot of the time, right?
Mm-hmm. I haven't come across any on the activities yet, because I've only taught one adult and two kids, right? There were not. In fact, that was one of my questions. I wanted to ask you where we can find all the different activities so we can take a look and maybe change some or add some.
Yeah, I think so. In there's the recycle button, right? And then you should have access to some on the when you're preparing. If you use the little plus button, when you've got when you've got all the activities for the class, you've got the list, and the page where you take the attendance for the students also, and at the end of all the list of activities, you should have a plus button as well that will allow you to add more material to the class. I'll show you how to do that in a second. When we're finished, if you're not familiar. But in terms of games, what could you do with some adults? Can you think of any games off the top of your head now that you could do with adults?
Well, I'm not sure really with adults what sort of game. Maybe guessing games or definitions, for example, depending on what the structure has been about. I suppose trying to create some sort of like I said, guessing games, or maybe somebody can define something and the other one has to come up with a word and things like that.
Yeah, like word association games or matching games. There's lots of kind of even silly games. Silly games, maybe the games that we consider for kids. Like with I did this in person. I haven't really done it online, but that game where you have to put the post-it note on your head, and it's especially good for kind of the lower levels for beginners. They can, to get them, you put the celebrity on the head or the famous person, and then they have to guess who it is, and it's really good for the lower levels to say like, okay, am I a man? Yes, you are. And getting the students, it gets them used to like answering and asking questions as well. So even for like S1 levels or a low kind of P2 level, getting them used to asking the questions. Okay, am I a singer? No, you aren't. Am I? And getting used to all that kind of stuff. That game works really well with adults as well. Just as well with kids. And I think we make the mistake sometimes to think, oh, games are only for kids. But I lots of my adult classes, they love games, and they get really competitive and they get really into it. And so there's lots of games that we can be using for adults as well, and I think we should always try to do it. Now, I think some of them are a little bit more difficult to do online, so some of them maybe some of the games that are a little bit easier to do in person, but there's some that you can do online as well. And the other thing that I mentioned just a little bit earlier was role plays, right? So role plays is something that's good to do. I found a lot of the time, if you say to adults and kids as well, like, we're going to do a role play, they get nervous and they think, no, I don't want to do a role play, and they get very embarrassed. But there's kind of a way to introduce it without telling them that you're going to do a role play. So it's like even something like, let's imagine, okay, we're in the shop and I come into your shop and I'm looking for this, and you can introduce the situation without saying, okay, we're going to do a role play. You're the shopkeeper, I'm the customer. Yeah, because sometimes, especially adults, they get a bit nervous and they think it's a bit silly sometimes, depending on on the adults. So, you know, you can introduce role plays as well, without them realizing that they're doing it, and without saying, okay, we're going to do a role play. Emma, if I come across to you, I don't know if you've got any other kind of things that you would like to add in terms of the games or role plays. I don't know if it's something you do with your students, or maybe not so much.
Games I find quite tricky online, and often I come across an activity that I'm not entirely sure. I think it's obviously been created for the classroom, so I usually have to skip it, and perhaps I'm not creative enough to think of a way to invent it for online. It would be great if Oxfridge we had more access to sort of online games, but I'm not sure how possible that is. I sort of, to be honest, I've sort of steered clear of sort of games. Role plays, yes, role plays are good, especially for like business classes as well. And I think that's the only kind of way of teaching that I've gone down online. For me, games is I always just find that it's much easier just to do in the classroom. But maybe, I mean, I'm open to exploring other ways of doing these online, but whenever I come across an activity, it's like, you know, present the flashcards and then turn the flashcards over and this kind of thing, and I'm just like, nah, skip, going to the next one. So we can't do that really online, can we? It's not something that, and there are, I mean, it is like you said, I would agree with you, it is easier in person to do some, but there are lots of, you know, role play you can do just as easily online as you could in person. Definitely. Role play is good.
Yeah. Like I say, sometimes I've had students say like, no, I don't want to do it. So then I quickly learned, okay, as long as I don't mention the word role play, then they're all right, you know. And when I was in person, actually, you know, I was teaching in some shops and stuff like that, and we would physically go around the shop and do it as well. It was at lunchtime, so the shop was closed for customers, you know. So we had the shop, and be like, okay, let's go around the shop, and we'd literally go around and be, you know, doing it all very you know, like, you know, we were able to pick things up and pick the clothes up and stuff like that, you know. So there's always that option as well. When in person, which again is a little bit more difficult online. But I think, you know, the more games we can include, the more, you know, just makes the class more interesting rather than the kind of typical, okay, we're going to read a text and we're going to talk about it or anything like that, you know. It can be quite repetitive. So I always try to encourage everybody when creating material, okay, let's try to think of as many different kind of different things that we can do in the same class, or, you know, and just it keeps it more dynamic, it keeps it more interesting, keeps the students on their toes, and keeps them practicing a lot. So let me share my screen with you now, and I'm going to show you, because I know you'll all have seen what the activities look like, but I think it's good to see what a blank activity looks like. So when you're creating, as a teacher, if I'm creating material, this is what I see now. Just so you guys know, to get to the activity creation section, if you would like activities, it's in the activity section that's down here, down the left hand side, and then you go to the section that says My Stock. Okay, so the CWs is the complementary work, and then you've got the My Stock section next to it. So you click on that, and then this is what a blank activity will look like. So you can see it's exactly like the material when you're preparing the material at the start of the week or before the classes. This one here that I've brought up, it tells me first of all that it's a P4 for adults. So you need to remember to make sure that you check the level of the material, because it needs to be appropriate for the level, and whether it's for adults, teens, kids, etc., etc. So when you're creating the material and you're thinking of your ideas, then keep that in mind and make sure you stick to that level. You know, if it tells me to do something for a level 2 adult, don't do it for a level 5 material, right? So it's really important, always remember the level. Here I've selected a structure activity, so I've got a structure activity, and it tells me what I need to do about. So here it says where you can read it. No, really, it's a straightforward narrative or description, etc., etc., etc. And it tells me here's some examples. So, for example, meanwhile, in the meantime, during. So I'm getting the system will tell me, okay, this is what your material that you've got. This is what it needs to be about. This is what you need to focus on. It's the same for the vocabulary, and it's the same for the topics as well. So for the vocabulary, it would tell me maybe here, okay, this is a P4 adult vocabulary, and it needs to be about, I don't know, strange objects in the workplace. I don't know, something like that. And it will tell me what it needs to be about. So it's also really important to stick to what the system tells me. In terms of the topic, sometimes it will tell me, okay, it's a level 2 topic. It's current news, which means for us that's cool because then we can use our imaginations and we have to think, okay, what we're going to do about. And it may say sometimes here, and if you go to your normal activities, it will tell you that, like, it will say, okay, it's current news and it must contain a game, or it must contain a role play, or it must contain something like charades or taboo or something like that. Now, that's not to say that the topic needs to be about taboo. That means that one part of the activity needs to include the game too. So you just need to always stick to what it says here as the description to what the topic's gonna, or the activity is gonna be about. So the first thing that you can see is that all the sections are here, as always, with the objective, the intro, the wrap-up, the notes, and the target language, but they're all blank. Okay, so the kind of guidelines that Oxinity and as teachers we've set out is that we should have probably 3 intro questions and three wrap-up questions. Sometimes 2's okay, but that's the kind of thing that we're going for. So to do the introduction, it's simple. We just need to click on the pencil and you can write your question. So I'll just put 3 intro questions. Yeah, remember the intro questions are just there to introduce the topic, to introduce what you're going to talk about. So it could be something like here with this one, we could say, I don't know, what did you do during the weekend, or something like that. No, put during in capitals, and so you're introducing some of the words that you're going to start to study. So you could click on the pencil, type your 3 intro questions, and then to save it, I just need to click off it, and the system will automatically save the intro questions. Okay, so I'll put here for 3. The objective is something that actually we can do as well. The objective is only for us. I tend to do the objective at the start of the activity as well. So that would just be 1 sentence, just describing what the text is going to be about. So again, I'll click on the little pencil symbol, and to save it, I just click off it and it's saved. Yeah. The wrap up I tend to leave to the end. The target language also. Once I've decided what I want to talk about, what I'm going to do with the students, then I need to do the attachments. And actually, sometimes I leave the intro and the wrap up and the objective till the end, because I've got a clear idea in my head to say, okay, I want to do this, this, and this. So I do the main part of the activity first. When I'm creating it, I create the attachments, and then after I go across and I do the intro questions and the wrap up. So you can do it in any order, really. The attachments are here, right? So this is the section that we're all familiar with, that you have the attachments that the students are gonna see, and where you have the teacher's notes. To create an attachment, I need to click on the plus, and it will give me 2 options. In the past we tended to use this one for videos, the one on the right. But now we use we kind of changed that around. Just it's easier to use on the platform. So I would forget the button on the right. It's not too important. And if we use the one on the left, it brings up something that we're all familiar with. These boxes again. If I go on the new plus, I can create another one. Okay, so I've got a couple of attachments created here already. When I'm creating these activities, I like to write it down on a piece of paper just beforehand. That's just the way I work. It's not something that everyone has to do, but I like to, when I'm kind of thinking about, okay, what am I going to do? How can I do this? I always kind of write down on a piece of paper, like, okay, attachment 1, I'll do this. Attachment 2, this. And I like to just plan it on a piece of paper before I put it in the system. Like I said, that's just the way I work. maybe not everybody is like that, you know. Now, if I click on the attachment, it brings up a page we're all familiar with again, with the two sections, the student section and the teacher section. And you need to create the attachment. Yeah. Okay, so I've thought about what I'm going to do. I'm going to do an introduction to this meanwhile, etc., etc. So to create the actual attachment, by clicking on this pencil here, it brings up a page like this. It looks kind of like the, you know, Microsoft Word or something like that, right? You've got the different tools and options. You can put it in bold, in capitals, make it larger, etc., etc. So I'll just write some of the words that were in at the start. Like, let me do it. So we've got meanwhile, in the meantime, during, and let's just imagine that I'm creating a list of words, for example, right? So I put my words in capitals, and I've got different options that I can do. I could put them in the center, for example. So I can use this button here to center the text. You can also underline the text if you would like, or put it in italics. You've got those options. One of the good things as well that you can do is you can make it bigger. So I can make it heading 3, which will make it larger. You can, you know, and I'd suggest you can have a play around with these buttons to see what they all do. The main ones that I tend to use would be to underline something, maybe center it, and I change the size here with the heading. You can use these buttons here to change the color of the text. So maybe you put it in yellow, and then, you know, maybe you decide with the next one, okay, I want it yellow but on a black background. So you've got different options. So it just makes it a little bit more visually, it just makes it nicer for the students to see, rather than just always, you know, long text. If we add a bit of color and a bit of, you know, it just makes it nicer to look at. Always one thing that I suggest to do is to have a picture as well, because, you know, I think if you've got a long text, it's all, you know, it's all good having the text there, but it's nice to have a text with a picture to go with it. So I always suggest we should try and put some pictures. Now, in terms of putting pictures into activities, it's one of the things that if you that I always mention, that if you just want one picture, that's not a problem. So you can have a picture, and it would be fine. I could just put it here, and I'll show you how to do it in a second. But if you've got an attachment, maybe it's a vocab activity, and you want, I don't know, 10 different pictures of objects in the house, then it looks better to put it in a table, to put them in different boxes. Okay, so the boxes, or to create a table in your material, in your activities, we use this one here. This button here, which is where you see the table. So I can click on this, and it will give me options of how many rows and how many columns. Now, if you're going to have 10 pictures, just in terms of formatting, because it depends what device the student's using, I suggest you have 10 pictures, like one below the other. So going down rather than across. Or if you're going to have a couple of pictures, have 2 next to each other. So you could have 2 by 2. So two different columns, and then 5 rows. So just try to do it. So if I do that, I'll do 5 rows and 2 columns, but don't do any more than kind of 2 going horizontally. I think not. It gets a little with the platform and certain devices, it gets a little bit messy. So it's either good just to have, if you want the 10 pictures, one below the other, which is what I tend to do a lot of the time, or you can have them in different boxes. Next to each other. So the pictures we need to find, first of all, or the way I do it is I save them to my desktop. So I'll go on Google, I'll find a picture of something that I want to have for, imagine I need a picture of a dog. Okay, I can go into Google Images, I can find a nice picture of a dog. I can then, or what I'll do is I'll then save that picture to my desktop, and then kind of drag it from the desktop and place it in one of the boxes. Let's do this together, maybe this is easier. So if I go to Images and I put dog, right? Let's say I want this picture here of this little dog. Okay, so what I'll do is I click on the picture. Yeah, it's just going slow. The computer's on a bit of a go slow this morning. Save image as. I will then save it to the desktop, write dog, and it's saved. Okay, so that picture is now saved to my desktop. If I go back to my activity and I do this, and what I'll do is I take dog and I drop him into the box. So you first need to save it to your desktop and then drag it into the box. Okay, so you just drag it in. Do that for all of them. Yeah, so for all the pictures, you first need to save them to the desktop and then drop them into the box. Now, just to make this dog a little bit better, I can put it in the middle of the box, and maybe I want to make him bigger or smaller, the picture, depending on the size. So you can also make sure that you remember to put the correct size. So if you double click, it gives me here that I can put the width. Now, often I find that maybe 400 is a good size. So you can make the dog a little bit bigger, and you can do that obviously for all of the pictures. So what I suggest is if you've got the pictures going down one after the other down in a line, if you put the first picture as 400, then the other pictures that you have in the other boxes, make sure they're 400 as width also. Okay, so you can make sure that it's all the same size, that everything's that everything looks neat and tidy. Once you've done that, and you're happy, then you can click on the save button. Now here it's not going to work, because this is why this is a good example actually why I prefer to put the pictures one after the other. So because I would need to change the width of the table. So by right clicking on the table, I can go on table properties. Here I can change the width from 500 to, let's say, 800. Okay, if I click on OK, then that's better already, you know, so you can make the table bigger. That's why, like I said, sometimes I prefer just to put the pictures one below the other. I'm going to say, sorry, there we are. So you've got your dog, and you've got your words underneath that are centered. Okay, just play around with the formatting when you're doing this. It's up to you guys, just to have a bit of a play around. There's not one kind of format that we all stick to. I think you can notice sometimes each teacher has their own individual style. But you know, I just try to keep it as neat as possible, keep the activities looking nice so it's visually attractive to look at from the student's point of view. Okay, a couple of other things that you need to do with this attachment, right? So my attachment obviously is not complete, and this is not something that I'm going to do. I'm not going to complete it now with you guys, and this is definitely not going to be the finished attachment. But we need to write some teacher's notes. Okay, now not every time you need teacher's notes. Sometimes, you know, you have a text and you have the concept check questions at the bottom, and actually there's no teacher's notes necessary or required for that. However, always remember, if you've got a quiz, for example, or a game, then maybe put the instructions in the teacher's notes or put the answers in the teacher's notes. And here it's exactly the same format. You can click on the pencil and you can put notes. I'll just put it there, and always remember to click the save button, so that you've clearly got the two sections. You've got the attachment and you've got the notes. You've got the instructions from the teachers, so exactly what to do with it. I also need to give this attachment a title. So again, by clicking on this pencil here, I need to put a title. And so here for this one, I can put, for example, pictures. And again, just click off it and the system automatically saves it. So if I click on this X here, it will take me back to this page. You'll see now that I've got my first attachment here, which says pictures. And I can click on it. I've got my dog, and I've got my teacher's notes as well in the second section. The other thing to remember, you need to maybe in terms of video, yeah. So in terms of a video, maybe you found a very cool video and you would like to put that in an attachment as well. So here I'll click on the second attachment. If I click on here and I'll write video, because that's the title. The video, if I open here, I will post a link in this section here. So it's you can take the link, the URL from YouTube, and you can just copy and paste it into this section there, and it will appear in the attachment, and then you will click save. Yeah. So just what I suggest is when you can, because you can have a little play with some of the activities that you've got assigned for your class anyway. You know, you don't have to have a blank one. We're all capable. We're all able to change material. to work on material and to change attachments, etc. Live, and changes for everybody in the system. So that's one of the benefits. If we see a typo, we're able to change it there and then, and it will change across the system for everybody. So you're all able to play around with the stuff. Let me just close this. Okay, you see there, I've got my pictures and video. The wrap-up questions, once I've finished my material is when I do my wrap-up questions and my target language. Okay, so the wrap-up questions, again, often we'll use stuff that it's just to reinforce, just to double check that the students have understood what we've covered. So in terms of a topic activity, it could be some of the vocabulary that was in there. Could you give me a sentence with this word? What's the opposite of this? All that kind of stuff we're going to write in the wrap-up sections. And again, let's try to do 3 wrap-up questions. Yeah. Save it, click off it, and it's done. The final kind of thing, a main part of the activity, is obviously the target language. Now, the target language as well is something that the students receive in their system. They can see the target language as well as the attachments. So it's something that we always need to make sure is completed in full. There's 4 different things for a target language. Now, if I click on the plus here, Oxinity has a large database of many words that have already appeared in other activities. And so often the target language is already there completed for me. So imagine we're doing this one about, this activity is about the word dog, right? I want the word dog to be part of my target language because it's in my picture, in my attachment. I've got a picture of a dog. So if I put dog in here and search for it, you'll see that it brings up a list of all the different words, all the different vocabulary, target language that's got the word dog in it. Okay, I select the first one because that's the one I want, and you can see that I've got the 4 different sections here. So I've got definition, an example, an image, and a listening. All right, so you need to make sure that you've got at least 1 definition, 1 example, 1 image, and 1 listening for the target language to be complete in full. So dog, my definition could be a pet animal that has grown past being a puppy, or it could be a domestic animal. Select the one that you think is the best. I'll just choose the first one for an example. Then we need an example. Maybe this first one, I walk my dog every day, or I have a dog called Rex, or I quite like the first one, that's all right. We have a picture, so you can use these arrows to pop up the different sections. And then you need an audio as well. Now with the audio, often you've got the audios there, like I mentioned. If not, if there was no audio there, you can add an audio using the plus button, same as the pictures. If I had no picture or I had no example, I can use the plus button to create my own and put my own example in there if I didn't like any of the ones. Now with the listening, if you're a bit like me and you don't like recording your voice, then I don't want to do that. There is a website that is called soundoftext.com. So you can bear that in mind. And soundoftext.com allows you to write a word, and it will automatically, they will give you give you an audio of the dog. But when this one with a word like dog, it's very common, it's been used a million times, I'm sure, in different activities. So I can pop up here, there, and I always make sure to listen to it as well, just to make sure that it sounds correct. So before you listen to it, no, perfect, and you can select the one you want. And once you've done that, then you can close the tab. Yeah, always make sure that you do a relevant one. Let me do here, for example, and it's related to the context in which it's being spoken about. I'll give you an example here of house. Okay, house is a word that's very common, so it should be here. So it is. I'll give a plus, but it's important to make sure that you keep it relevant. So if I'm doing an activity and it's about objects in the house, first of all, my definition could be a building you live in. Perfect, that's good. But I don't then want to put in a definition of I listen to house music with this image, because they're not the same thing, right? And it might not be the house music is not related to what I was talking about in the material, so in the attachment. So it's really important to make sure that it's the same. So it's not that a building you live in and I listen to house music. I could say I have a big house, and then select, if I go down, I can select the picture of the house that I would like to do as well. Maybe I select this one. So make sure that it's relevant not only to what it's referring to in the attachments, but that the different steps are all matching as well. Yeah, I see sometimes, and it is a bit of a mix and match, and it's not relevant to what we're supposed to be talking about. Now, in terms of the target language, we say somewhere around 6 to 8 target language is good. So I think if you can get 6 target language done, then that's the perfect thing here. Always making sure that it's got the 4 sections, like I said: definition, example, a picture, and an audio. And to know that it's got all of those, if I take the example here of the dog, it tells me the title. Okay, dog, I have a definition, I have my example, I can see my picture, and I've got an audio. With the house one here, I'm missing the audio, so I would need to add one to that section. Final thing you need to remember is to do the title, of the activity, and that's straight away here at the very top, when underneath where it tells you. This is where you write the title for the activity. Again, you click on the pencil, then you click off, and the system automatically saves it for you. So just as a kind of review, make sure that your activities, that all the activities, they have a title, they have an objective, which just needs to be a sentence, so the teacher knows what the objective of the activity is. It's not for the students. I need to have 3 intro questions. I've got my attachments here. By clicking on the plus and this little symbol on the left-hand side allows me to have a new attachment. I can click on the attachment and work with it. Make sure you practice the formatting, the pictures, the correct size, like I mentioned. In a table, looks better. The text, maybe add some color. But like I said, that's something that I suggest you guys when you're doing activities or when you're improving them or creating them, and have a play around with that. And then finally, at the bottom, you've got the 3 wrap-up questions, and you've got the target language completed in full with the 4 sections completed. And make sure that the whole activity doesn't go away from this definition. Now, I know my example here with the dog and etc. is nothing related to this, but always make sure that when you're creating material, that you have always keep in mind the level, the type of activity it is. So what the purpose of the activity is it to practice the structure? Is it to practice a new tense? Is it to practice the fluency through a topic activity? And then we've got the issue here, what it needs to cover. And I always refer back to that when I'm creating my material, when I'm creating attachments and creating activities, just to make sure I'm not going too far away from what it says there and what it suggests, and what it not suggests, actually what it tells me to do. I've got that there, and I always refer back to it just to make sure I'm not straying too far from what it is supposed to be. I hope that you were able to see lots of that. I don't know if anybody's got any questions for me, any doubts about anything we mentioned. I can see some of you have had to leave, and that's cool. I'm not sure if you're still here. But yeah, I'll speak to you soon. But is there any questions from anybody here? No?
Rob, yes, I have one question. Sorry. Say you are to make an activity, like I was asking you before. Say, for example, I want to talk about the feelings for the kids, for example. Maybe Auxility already has something of the sort. So is there any way we can see that stockage?
Yes, I'm not sure if it's a thing, and it's something that maybe we need to approach Ranmila and ask. I'm not sure if you can see all of the stock. Now, I know you can add activities to your classes. So if I go to my classes for the day, and I'll take this example that I had with Sergio this morning. If I go along to the end here, you can see this plus button. It gives me 2 options. It can either brand new or find one. Now, if I click on brand new, it will open up exactly like we've just looked at now. It will open up a whole blank activity where you can create your own material and put it in there. Now, that material will only be for you if you go on brand new and that specific class. It won't appear in everybody's class. You can also go and find one. Now, if I click on find one, I've got here a selection of lots of activities that I can choose from. So I don't know if you've got that there. You should have a check, Mary Carmen,
Thanks.
and have a check there, because I think often those ones there that are the find ones are activities that I've created in the past, and I have like a bank of activities that I can select from. The other option that you've got is if, for example, you see, and it might be a bit of a pain having to do it, but if you click on the plus and you click on brand new, it will refresh the page. Once I then jump along to the end, it's not done it, but it will have an extra. I need to speak to the technicians, but they will have like a blank activity at the end. And if you saw some material in another class that you would like to have so I saw some material, for example, in my class with at 11 o'clock, I saw some material that I would like to do with Sergio, but that, you know, there may be different levels or it's just not in there. I could just copy and paste it into a blank activity here using the plus sign, and then brand new. I could copy and paste the material into there, and then I would have it in Sergio's class as well.
That's interesting. Okay.
I think, I'm not sure if maybe something going forward they're working on it so that we can have a little bit more of we can access more of the material. That's something that we would have to speak to Radmila about, really.
So if you click the plus button and you want to, like what you showed before, there was a bank of different activities, and then it said view. You can view it and then add it.
And then add it, exactly. So I can go on here. I can go on find one. I can click on I don't know, this one here about odd sock day. I can click on view. It will bring up the activity. It will show me the activity. I can look over it. I think, yeah, that's a cool activity. I'll click on this cross here in the left, and then I can click on select. And that activity will then be uploaded into the system for that class.
Okay, that's great. Thank you, Rob.
You're welcome. So it allows us to have a little bit more, we've got more activities there to select from, to choose from, right? I'll close this. Let me see. Eric, can you hear me?
Hi, I arrived a little bit later. It seems I used an old link. Is that possible? And it didn't connect.
Possibly. I'm not sure. This has been recorded anyway, so you'll be able to watch the start back to see before you arrived. Anyway, you'll be able to watch it once we finish once we finish this meeting. In this link, it will have a recording there of the whole meeting for you, so you can watch what you've missed.
Yeah, but I haven't received any of the links from the previous webinars. No.
Like, I'll write it down and then I'll get someone to check that out.
Yeah.
And for you, and then send you some of the links for the other webinars.
No, I've actually got them. I've actually requested them this morning.
Okay.
I don't know how it works. I just clicked on a link from a week ago, which corresponded with the time, and I was just waiting and waiting. It didn't connect.
Because that wouldn't be out of date if it was for last week. Then Radmila posts them every day. At the start of the week, she posts some links for what we have for the webinars coming up for the week. But let me get. I'll message some people and see about that. See what's going on there.
I've got the links for the rest of the day, so that's okay. But I would like some of the links for the previous webinars, please. Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll message.
Thank you.
And after when we're finished, I'll get someone to get onto that. Yeah.
And sorry, will this connection be valid for the next webinar, or do I?
No, you'll need to go out. I think there's a webinar in a couple of minutes. You know, with Anna Elena, you'll have to use the next one to get onto that one, because it's in like different platforms, but different webinars. If you like, different groups. So you'll have to use that one. We are running out of time, because I know there is another webinar that I think is important for some of you guys to go to. But Carlos, do you have a question?
Hi there. Yeah, I had the same question as Eric, because I was trying to join, and I would like to know if the other links that I've got in my email are going to be working for the next webinars, because I had to go into I Am Oxinity and ask for technical support, and actually it was the technician who gave me the link to this room. Otherwise, I was like just like Eric, waiting and waiting and waiting.
Okay, I've written all your names down now, so I'll get on to somebody now.
Sorry, interrupting. I'll try and copy the links into the.
I was going to say, if you have the links, Eric, could you put it in this chat, and then Daniel, you'll be able to jump over to the other webinar. But yeah, because I know it's starting in a couple of minutes, so we can wrap up there for today. But I'll get on to some people now about those links, why you can't see them or why you're not receiving them or whatever, because that's a bit strange.
There's one link in there. I'm going to send it up. Can you see it? Sorry, can you see it?
Yeah, it's in there now. Yeah. Awesome.
The next one.
Perfect. Well, we can finish there, guys, because I have another class, so I need to jump across to that. But I'll get this recording saved, and I'll speak to you all very soon. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Awesome. Cheers. Thanks a lot, guys. Bye.
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 That's for today's links, okay?
Those are
today's.